Alright gang, it's time to visit Trooth's Manga Cafe once again. I'm Trooth and I own and operate a non-existent manga cafe, and you're about to get a brief overview of all the manga I read between summer of 2024 and the end of 2024. This time should theoretically go smoother than the last one I did for a few reasons. One, I think you're going to see fewer visual glitches, and two is that I actually wrote a list of everything I want to talk about before talking about it, instead of just like going through my planner where I logged everything throughout the year, and I organized things into categories before I recorded. So you won't get those disjointed edits where I talk about something that I mentioned earlier, which actually shows up later in the finalized video, unless I lose my mind and decide to edit this out of order for some reason. I'm gonna try and not take so much time talking about every single series this time, because a lot of them are things that I have talked about in the past, and I only have like 1 or 2 volumes worth of updates to go over. So the way I've categorized my reads of the year is things that are still ongoing for me, things that I read 1 volume of just to sample, things that I finished, and new series that I picked up, with plans to read more. Now out of those, we've got 14 ongoing reads, 5 sampler reads, 5 finished reads, and 4 new series. And if you don't want to do the math, I did it for you. My ongoing reads are equal in number to the new ones I picked up and the ones that I finished. So in the past, I would tell you what I read in what month and like what time of the year. I realize that's probably not really relevant information for anybody but me, and then it's questionable how relevant it is. So I'm just gonna kind of give you drive-by brief updates on my ongoing reads, since they're the most numerous, and I don't have a whole lot of new stuff to say about them. First up is Chainsaw Man, and as usual I have bought every volume. I've got, I think number 15 might have been out when I did the summer recap. But yeah, now I've got volume 16, and in fact I got volume 17 like a day or 2 before I recorded this, and that is the newest thing to come out. So one thing I really love about Chainsaw Man volumes is like the author's note at the beginning of every volume. You'll just see on the first page where Fujimoto wrote, "I love insert movie here." And anytime I had seen one of the movies that he says he loves, it was a movie that I also loved. So I decided this year to watch all of his recommended movies, and as it turns out, some of them were TV shows. But that was definitely a fun little film quest. If you like Chainsaw Man, and especially if you like horror movies, I'd highly recommend going through Fujimoto's loved movie list. Anyway, Chainsaw Man is one of those series where I keep up with every chapter the day it comes out, to the best of my ability. And I can't talk a whole lot about it without giving spoilers for the later chapters. I will just say I thought part 2 had kind of a slow start. You know, all of the volumes that came after volume 11. I think a lot of people felt that way, but I am absolutely loving the most current chapters. It is poppin' off, you might say. I also heard a really interesting fan theory about Chainsaw Man, which I don't want to go into full detail to here, since it would be really time-consuming. You can join my Discord if you want to ask me about my Chainsaw Man fan theory that I heard. But basically the gist of it is that Pochita was not the Chainsaw Devil, but might be the devil of something else. I have a lot of compelling evidence for this. If I feel really industrious, I could make a full video on it, because I don't know how many people are talking about this. This might be common knowledge already. But man, it was fascinating to me. I'm up to volume 7 on Choujin X. Every volume that goes by with Choujin X, I want to read it more and more. I think it keeps getting better and better. And I'm kind of bewildered that it doesn't have like an amazingly high score on my anime list, but then again, the general user base of my anime list is continually baffling to me. Like, I really don't know who is watching so many isekai series and giving them decent ratings. Who are these people? Anyway, the wait for new volumes of Choujin X is very slow and arduous. It's making me want to read Tokyo Ghoul in the meantime, because that was a series that I slept on for a long time. I should probably bring back the, priority rankings like I did in the last video. I thought that was a good idea. Choujin X is a very high priority. It's a read-on-site series. It's not a series that I'm buying, but in the future it could be. Especially if it's not too long. Speaking of my priorities, next up we got Demons of the Shadow Realm. And I talked about this one last time. You know, the new fantasy action series by the creator of Full Metal Alchemist. Everybody is waiting to see if this is gonna be another masterpiece. And so far, I'm not really feeling it that much. I mentioned last time I talked about it that in the most recent volume I had read, characters spend an awful lot of time sitting around in an apartment and talking instead of actually furthering the plot. And I decided to read one more volume, and it was, interesting at first. There was definitely, some cool action, some plot forwarding, and there was still a lot of sitting around in apartments and talking. And I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering Full Metal Alchemist. Maybe there were a lot of scenes in that where people also sat around and talked about what to do next. But I don't know. I guess it's just tougher in a series like this where the action is more compelling and you want to see things moving forward more. I mean, the sitting around and talking was kind of fun when it's like the fish out of water stuff about, the main character who lived in a secluded village his whole life, now coming into the city. That kind of stuff is fun. It's fun that you can see them in the background actually watching Full Metal Alchemist on TV. That's pretty amazing. But a lot of the conversation is just kind of like, well, what should we do next? What do we think our enemies are gonna do next? How are we gonna account for whatever they might try to do? Instead of, anybody doing anything. So basically, I've pretty much dropped this series for the foreseeable future, unless I start to hear things about how it has picked way up and gotten way more interesting. Maybe when there's 5 or 6 more volumes out, and I see positive praise for it online or something like that, maybe I'll go back to it. We had yet another volume of Dai Dark come out. Volume 7 now. And the latest of Dai Dark, well, I don't have that much to report. It's more of the same great, horribly violent, happy-go-lucky people goofing around in space, murdering a bunch of other people and dabbling in dark magics. It's great. You get a flashback chapter about the main character going around as a toddler, first learning how to kill people. Dai Dark continues to be a pre-order every volume kind of series for me. I'm sure you've heard me sing its praises many times in the past, and Volume 7 is more of what I love. Dandadan continues to be great. I don't remember if Volume 8 was out when I last recorded, but now I've got Volume 9 as well, and I've got Volume 10, so I am completely caught up on that series as far as print volumes go. Well, the anime finally aired for Dandadan. The first season came out, and finally it seems like everybody is starting to believe me about how great it is, because the manga volumes are just flying off the shelves. And yeah, that first season was every bit as amazing as I thought it would be, maybe even more. So I've said this many times before, and I will say it again, if you are not yet on the Dandadan train, then get on board. I was actually reading Volume 10 recently when I was on a break at the Manga Cafe, and I was about to finish that volume when I came across a site that stopped me dead in my tracks. It was the "Have you ever dreamed this man?" He shows up and reenacts his favorite scene from Being John Malkovich, and then launches into a pretty great fight scene. I did not realize that the "Have you ever dreamed this man?" meme was such a widespread phenomenon. I had no idea people in Japan were even aware of him. but there he is in the manga I'm reading. So yeah, it goes without saying, this is yet another pre-order every volume buy on-site series, and will probably continue to be for a long time. And speaking of hype trains you should really be on, there's a Gachiakuta. Another series you really should be reading. This one has an anime confirmed, and I think this is another case where as soon as that anime airs, everybody's gonna finally believe me about how great it is. Although honestly, this one does sell in pretty high numbers also. People do seem to already have the word out about this one. Now, aside from being a great action series, which this manga is, it's also got some nice underlying themes that I really appreciate. Like, a big part of the main character's power has to do with, like, kind of taking broken or unwanted things and, like, unleashing their potential for the purpose of fighting, which is honestly a really cool power. And I mentioned when I talked about this series in the past that it has a graffiti artist credited on the cover along with the main artist. And once I was getting into, like, volumes 3 and 4, the kind of prevalence of art became a bigger element of the story also. They go to this whole graffiti town, and they also learn about how creating art kind of gives power to things. So there's this really cool, like, underlying theme of, like, the positivity of creation, which is great on top of the series just having stunning, beautiful artwork and really well done action scene. It's such a complete package. Please go pick it up right now. I read every volume as soon as it shows up in the manga cafe. I read one more volume of The Summer Hikaru Died, up to volume 4 now. This one also had an anime confirmed recently. The anime I'm not, like, as excited to watch. I'll probably watch it, but I don't know. I mean, I'm glad it's getting an anime, so, like, more eyes will probably be on the manga. But honestly, I'm, like, perfectly content just to keep reading it, I think. Not a whole lot of new stuff to report in this one, although there is kind of an intriguing mystery plot going on by volume 4, where the main characters, you know, they take a trip to the library and they learn that, oh, the names of all the nearby towns have changed over the years, and mysteriously all of the towns in the area used to be named after, like, human body parts. Like, there was one named after the head, and 2 named after arms, and 2 named after legs. And what did this mean? So, you know, it's kind of developing the story in an intriguing way. There's also a panel that I kind of got a kick out of, where the characters use a bottle of Ladies' Bloodstains Be Gone. Which, like, I guess that might be a product that exists. It's also a very convenient thing to have on hand when you stab somebody, I guess. Another one, which I think I had read a volume or 2 of in my last batch of reading, you know, like in my summer batch, but I didn't talk about it, I think because I didn't remember that much about it, was Insomniacs After School. That's another ongoing read for me. I became aware as I'm reading this series that I'm kind of a hypocrite, because I picked up a volume of this right after I read my most recent volume of Demons of the Shadow Realm, you know, a series where I have notoriously complained that characters just sit around in a room talking. And then I go into Insomniacs After School and I'm like, this is such a nice, refreshing read. All these characters just sitting around in a room and talking. Wait, hold on. But seriously, I would be reading a volume of Insomniacs After School, and a thing that I love in this manga is, like, sometimes you go whole pages with no dialogue at all. Sometimes it's, like, 3 or 4 pages in a row of just illustrations of things the characters are doing and nothing that they're saying. And I actually really love that. And I guess why I think it works in Insomniacs After School and doesn't work in Demons of the Shadow Realm is I think it's just a matter of visual storytelling, where when I see these illustrations in Insomniacs, that's why I'm here, you know? I'm here to watch these characters lazily pass by their summer days, and make lasting memories that they're going to love all throughout adulthood. Whereas in Demons of the Shadow Realm, I'm there for like action and intrigue, and when people are just sitting around discussing their plans very calmly and mundanely, I feel like I'm not getting what I'm there for. Anyway, I don't have that much to say about Insomniacs After School. It's still just a very like nice, straightforward, straight across the plate high school romance story. And you know, it's nice to have something like that isn't like gimmicky, you know? It's not like the rom-coms written for dudes that are just, oh, what if your dream girl wanted to date you and she was perfect in every way? It's just, you know, it's about real-ass characters going through realistic, non-exaggerated experiences. But it's just, I don't know, kind of a beautiful slice of life. I don't know how better to put it. This one is not like a read-on-site priority for me, but it's a pretty high priority, and it's increasing as I read more volumes. I read another volume or two of Kaiju No. 8, and this one honestly is like kind of becoming a slightly lower priority for me as it goes on. Here's the thing, I mean, speaking of getting what you're coming there for, I am coming to Kaiju No. 8 for cool illustrations, well-composed action, cool monster designs, and just a nice illustration style. And I am continuing to get all of that. But I think I've brought up this sort of complaint about Kaiju No. 8 in the past, and it still kind of holds, which is, I don't feel like the characters are very well characterized outside of just how they fight kaiju. You know, everybody has a fighting style, but a lot of their personalities don't get a lot of chance to shine, because it's just kind of like fight scene after fight scene after fight scene. Which is, you know, done well, but I opened up the most recent volume and I was like, okay, what was happening again? Oh yeah, well, they were in a big battle with a bunch of kaiju, like usual. So I guess Kaiju No. 8 is kind of a medium priority read. When a new volume comes in, it usually takes me a few weeks to get around to it, but I'll get to it. I read one or two more volumes of Komi, and like, I kind of hate to say this, but my feelings on that are kind of similar to my feelings of Kaiju No. 8, where, you know, I opened up volume 31 or whatever it was, and I was like, well, this is kind of more of the same. It's just kind of like, sometimes Komi has like repeating chapter premises, I guess. It's like, oh, here's the summer festival chapter again, where everybody goes to the summer festival, except now there's like 60, 70 different characters to talk about and show what they're doing. So it's like, you know, it packs so many characters into a chapter, and it basically gives you like one panel per character to show you what they're doing. And I don't know, it's hard to put my feelings on present day Komi into words, because I don't know, I'm very conflicted on it. Like, it having 100 characters as a goal, you know, like Komi's goal of making 100 friends, means that a lot of those characters are gonna, like, come and go pretty quickly. And so, you know, I want previously established characters to get more of a chance to shine, but that also means the manga is gonna get a slower pace, because if you give all of the established characters more time to shine, that's less time to bring in new characters. But also, I really want her to get to the end of that list of 100 so the series doesn't drag on forever. And so it's kind of stuck in this catch-22 where it's like, you know, you want more time with each of the characters, but you also don't want the series dragging on forever, and it's hard to get to a satisfying balance with that. I think my priority on Komi has gotten a little lower, and I kind of feel like it's gotten that way with a lot of people. I think I don't sell nearly as many volumes of Komi as I once did. I also kind of saw people on Twitter recently, I mean, like in the last few months, it's kind of like dragging the more recent art style on Komi herself. And like, I don't think the newer, like, shifted art style is like egregiously bad. I don't think it's even necessarily inferior to the earlier illustrations. I mean, there is definitely a noticeable art style shift, but that's like kind of a non-factor for me. I will keep reading it, but it's definitely not with the same fervor I once had for it. Okay, Nagatoro is on the list again. I swear I am working on the Nagatoro video. It's a pretty big undertaking, but look, I'll give you a screenshot of like the Vegas video editing file so you can see I have indeed been working on it. It is coming, so I'll just say keep an eye out for that, and that's about all I have to say about that for right now. I read one more volume of Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You. I was about to call it Smoking Behind the Cigarette with You, and I was like, the hell? I had to like look down at my list of series to be like, surely I did not write that down. Anyway, Smoking Behind the Dumpster with You. I said last time I talked about this series that I wasn't sure if I was going to go beyond volume 1. I did read one more volume. I had the feeling it was going to be just more of the same. And I was right, it's basically more of the same in volume 2. Volume 3 has been out for a few weeks, and I'll probably read that when I get around to it. It's, you know, really not top of my list. And basically what I said about the series last time was I liked near the end of volume 1 when it seemed like the series was gonna develop the plot more and go in kind of a heavier, darker direction, and then it just kind of sidestepped that in order to step into the shoes of a rom-com where the same thing happens for 300 chapters. This seems like it's gonna be that, and part of the reason I'm curious to read more of it at this point is I'm very curious how the artist is going to sustain this premise of this guy smoking behind the supermarket with a girl who he does not realize is the same girl he sees in the checkout line every day. How long can this premise be sustained? I am so curious to know. Maybe you'll find out when I do my next update video next summer, as I will probably have read another volume or 2 of it, assuming it doesn't end abruptly. Although, on such a flimsy premise, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends abruptly. And I would not be unpleasantly surprised if it ends kind of abruptly. That would be fine. There's more Spy Family on here. I read another volume or 2 of that. I don't have all that much to say about Spy Family that I haven't said in past videos. Basically, to give you a nice drive-by update, it's still really good. I still read every new volume on site, still loving it. Love the anime, watched the movie this year. The movie is also very good. It has not started to drag. It hasn't become less funny or less interesting. Still think it's great. So, go read that one. I've talked in the past about how when I'm going through the aisles of the manga cafe, I'll be looking for my next read, and I pass by Witch Hat Atelier, and I'm like, there's always more Witch Hat. I can always read more of that. And every time I sit down to read a volume, I'm like, man, this series is so good. I gotta read more of it. And months go by where I read other stuff instead for some reason. So I read one more volume of Witch Hat. This was number 10 or 11, I think. It's still very good. The illustrations are still top-notch. I love the creative use of paneling and page layouts. And I love how it is now going bravely into darker topics. It kind of lures you in with this whimsical world of witches, where anybody can use magic, and you have to illustrate in creative ways to use it. And then it starts getting into these heavier topics of like, why do we restrict who is allowed to use magic? why are certain types of magic forbidden when it seems like they have a lot of potential to help people? And, you know, characters kind of change their allegiances based on some of these questions, and you can absolutely understand where they're coming from. You know, like the character who had no use of his legs until he met somebody who introduced him to forbidden medical magic that let him alter his body in a way that allowed him to walk on two legs. It kind of raises some like surprisingly compelling, morally gray ethical questions about, you know, who decides the law, who decides what magic is allowed to be used, and, you know, why does the royal family want to get in the good graces with certain witches? And why does that give the characters such an uneasy feeling? So, as usual, I'm eager to read more Witch Hat. By the way, that one also has an anime confirmed, so get on reading this one, and get on watching it when it comes out. Hopefully in my summer update I will have read more than one volume, but don't be surprised if I am once again lagging behind, inexplicably. Right, well, that basically sums up all of my currently ongoing reads. Tune in next time for manga that I read one volume of to sample, and may or may not continue reading. Find out my verdicts in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone who watched, and a special thanks to everyone who has financially supported the Manga Cafe, listed here. Normally at the end of my recap videos I like to post a viewer question of the week, but since this is the first video of the batch, there aren't any to respond to yet, so I'll invite you to leave a comment down below, or join my Discord and ask me a question there, and maybe I will feature it at the end of the following video. I hope to see you then.